For too long we have held preconceived notions of the market and the state that were seemingly independent of local societies and cultures. Underscore the debate about civil society ultimately is about how culture, market, and state relate to each other. Concern about civil society, however, is not only relevant to Central and Eastern Europe and the developing world. It is very much of interest to the European Union as well. The civil dialogue initiated by the Commission in the 1990s was a first attempt by the EU to give the institutions of society and not only governments and businesses a voice at the policy-making tables in Brussels. The EU, like other international institutions, has a long way to go in trying to accommodate the frequently divergent interests of non-governmental organizations and citizen groups. Learning to write well means discovering how to write plainly and clearly. Now that doesn't mean that plainness is the only good style, or that you should become a slave to spare, unadorned writing. Formality and ornateness have their place, and in competent hands complexity can carry us on a dizzying, breathtaking journey. But most students, most of the time, should strive to be sensibly simple, to develop a baseline style of short words, active verbs, and relatively simple sentences conveying clear actions or identities. It's faster, it makes arguments easier to follow, it increases the chances a busy reader will bother to pay attention, and it lets you center one more attention on your moments of rhetorical flourish, which I do not advise abandoning altogether. Essays are used as an assessment tool to evaluate your ability to research a topic and construct an argument, as well as your understanding of subject content. This does not mean that essays are a regurgitation of everything your lecturer has said throughout the course. Essays are your opportunity to explore in greater depths aspects of the course, theories, issues, texts, etc., and in some cases relate these aspects to a particular context. It is your opportunity to articulate your ideas, but in a certain way using formal academic style. The book advances 5 fundamental and, in my view, fundamentally correct propositions. First, for all its manifest achievements, the Chinese attempt to marry a communist party state with the market is unsustainable. Hutton does not deny the economic achievements of the past 3 decades. But he stresses that the result has been not free market capitalism, but Leninist corporatism. This is not a viable new model, but an ultimately dysfunctional hybrid. In our studies, those people on a higher protein diet lost the same amount of weight as those on a higher carbohydrate diet. This is because the 2 diets offered an equal amount of fat. However, body composition, that is, the ratio of fat to muscle, showed greater improvement among those people on the higher protein diet. When the participants in other studies were allowed to eat until they were no longer hungry, those on the higher protein diet lost more weight than those on the higher carbohydrate diet, even after more than a year. The reduction in hunger and the beneficial effect on muscle provided by the higher protein diet is mostly related to its protein content, while the enhanced fat loss seems to be related to its lower amounts of carbohydrate. The diet is healthy because its protein comes from lean red meat, fish, chicken, and low-fat dairy products, all of which provide good nutrition. A high-protein diet in which the protein comes from protein powders and supplements is unlikely to be healthy, unless the supplements are fortified with vitamins and minerals. If you're choosing to use the random pairing or are letting the college choose your roommate for you, you'll probably have to fill out some kind of profile or questionnaire. These usually include things like, what time do you usually go to bed? Where do you prefer to study? Do you keep your space clean or are you more messy, etc. When you're answering these questions, be as honest as possible. If there's something you're dead set against, e.g., a roommate who smokes, you can mark that, and you will not be paired with someone who fits that criteria.
Most Americans take energy for granted. But, for many families, maintaining access to reliable and affordable energy is a persistent challenge and a significant material hardship. This is a problem referred to as energy insecurity, and it affects millions of American households each year. We have found that energy insecurity is a growing and vexing problem among low-income households, and the COVID-19 pandemic has made this problem worse. Our analysis finds that there are disparities in rates of energy insecurity across various socio-demographic groups.
The troubles of the individual soul. The verdict is never a reliable yes. One is never done with cycles of fear and reassurance seeking. Every time their spirits sink, which is often, the self-doubting sufferer picks up their phone and begs to know whether they have permission to go on. If this might be us, we should grow curious about, and jealous of, people who are free. They are so because someone long ago settled the question of what they were worth and the answer has seemed solid ever since. Social media is a roar in the next valley, not a mob in their own mind.
The Western countries' women are becoming more and more reluctant to give birth to babies. However, the male status in society remains as strong as it ever has in recent years. The birth rates increased during 20th century, but it starts to decrease over these last 2 decades. In the year 2000, as an example, the birth rate remained at around 1%. In today's lecture, I'm going to talk about changes in air pollution since the middle of the last century and what has created these changes. By the 1950s, air pollution was very visible with frequent thick black fogs known as smogs in many large cities around the world. The main source of this pollution was from factories and it caused severe health problems. For example, a particularly severe smog in London in 1952 caused over 4,000 deaths. Obviously, something had to be done, and in 1956 a Clean Air Act was introduced in Britain.